Hey guys, Lyle with Cast and Trek Outdoors coming today with the topic of plunking. Going to be going over what it is, how to do it, setups for it, what you use. This is going to be a type of bottom fishing I use it for salmon. You can apply this for sturgeon, catfish, a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's going to be one of my favorite things to go over with you, and I will show you the ins and outs and show you what we're going to be working with as far as salmon fishing, which we will be getting a video for that to you guys shortly as well. Plunking is, like I said, effectively a bottom fishing technique. So plunking is going to be where you have a weight, which is usually attached to this clip down here at the bottom, and you cast out typically on a big river, a lot of current, usually a lot of weight. So usually, depending on the current, 8 ounces minimum, upwards to 16 ounces, which is a pound. So that's a lot of weight. So for that, you want a stouter rod. You want something that can throw that weight, that's rated for that weight, plus, the fighting the fish aspect of it, depending on which fish you're going for. Sturgeon, salmon, you're gonna want bigger rods like this guy. And then if you're doing catfish or something, you can downsize this. So you got a sliding weight setup, kind of like we showed you for trout fishing. Simple, it's just scaled up quite a bit. So we have this heavy duty clip that you can attach your weight to that isn't gonna get bent out from the weight. And then usually you have some sort of barrel swivel or barrel chain, and if you're fishing for bigger fish like I am, being salmon, you want to get the heavy duty barrel swivels so they won't fail on you. Then you run up, and this can either be mainline or this one here I have leader on. The one I'm going to be tying up in just a second, I'm going to use mainline because I'm curious as to whether or not it matters using leader. But this is 30-pound fluorocarbon, 30 or 35. This was one of the first plunking setups I ever had, so it's been a while since I've done anything. Then it goes up to a T, and I'll get a close-up on the T for you and this stuff up here. But this T basically attaches to this leader that runs down to the bottom, and then it runs up to your main line and attaches there. And it's got a place to connect 2 leaders, one being here at the T, and the other one, that barrel swivel down at the bottom, is what you use to attach another leader. We usually run spinning glows, and I'll show you what those are here in a second, along with this hat. Now you can slide a quick fish down to this hat, and this is adjustable. And how you would do that is in Oregon, you can run 3 hooks, which is where we're going to be fishing. So if you wanted to, you could tie a whole nother T onto this and run 3 spinning glows. It's a very long setup. You probably need a longer rod than this. This is only 8-footer. For that, I'd probably recommend like at least 9.5, probably 10 or 11, still a stout rod, just so you have more room and longer to be able to keep that from tangling as you're casting out. And then this hat, if you're going to run just a 2 setup and you want to have a potential slide a quick fish down, this has 2 bobber stops underneath of it, and that you can physically adjust up or down. You see there, I adjusted that up. So now if I slide something down this, so usually you'll cast out with your spinning glows attached to your T and to your bottom barrel swivel already. And then you can have this hat slid up to whatever length you want, depending on the leader length of what you're sliding down. You then attach that to your line and use the current to work it down. And I'll show you. Quick fish is like a plug or crankbait. It's got, current takes it by its lip, and that'll help you work it down, and it'll eventually get stuck on this and it'll stay there. Check your regulations to make sure how many hooks you can run before you do that. But this one's set up for Oregon and set up for salmon in particular. If you're going for, say, sturgeon, you're probably not going to want this T, although I have caught a sturgeon on this very setup by accident, but they usually close to the bottom, so you can just have this one barrel swivel down at the bottom, and then this is where you attach your leader to and kind of go off as like a standard bottom fishing technique. I've got 2 plunking setups already, but on this trip I might have some buddies showing up. They don't have rods, so I'm going to string up my sturgeon rod. I'm just gonna do main line on this one. We're gonna cut it and we're gonna fix one of those T's. I've got a little bit different styled one here. We're gonna fix one of those guys. As far as distance, just think of what your average leader length is. For casting, try to keep in mind when you space out your T, how far it is, so when you're casting those, you don't have to worry about tangling up your spinning glows more than they'll get a little bit tangled and they'll straighten out in the water, hopefully. That's what this gear is set up to do. So we'll go ahead and get this tied up here real quick, and then I'll go over some of the tackle that you would use in a plunking setup, and a little bit more on tactics, and that'll be it. Let's get into it, guys. I'll show you how to tie this up real quick. All I'm gonna need for this is gonna be some snips that I can cut 80-pound braid with, because when you're running these bigger setups, you want heavy duty braid, because you think you're not just fighting a fish, you're also fighting current, and you're fighting the weight that you're going to be throwing out there of the gear. Pull out enough line to where I have enough to tie this up. Think about my leader lengths on my spinning glows. I'm probably going to cut right about here, and this is going to be super easy now. We're going to attach this to this first, because it's the only way we're going to be able to tie a polymer knot on each end of this. So polymer knot, you kind of make a loop through there, take that loop, do just a standard overhand knot. You put this through, put the actual piece you're tying on through that loop before you close it down. So you will need to make sure that there's enough extra line that you can get it around there, and then you just pull this down. Because I'm dealing with 80-pound line, make sure you wet it so it just makes it easier. But there you go. Now we're going to attach this to the main line. I'm going to need a little bit more line here. So we're going to have to thread all of this through that loop to tie a polymer onto it, which is fine. It's not hard to do. Put that through there. Make sure that loop is big enough, and then we're just going to pull all of this through while trying not to turn it into a tangled mess. This is kind of my test rod too, because I'm curious if having leader, fluorocarbon leader on there really matters, because the fish probably won't see this, and you'll see what I mean in just a second here. I got all that, wet this. We're gonna pull this sucker down again, hopefully. There we go. It's being a little finicky because it's 80-pound braid, and 80-pound braid likes to snare itself. So we'll just check this, and that's all looking good. Polymer knot is like one of the easiest, strongest knots you can have. So that's it. If you were to add a top hat onto this, before I tied my main line on to this T, I would put first the top hat, then that bead to protect the knot and to fill that void behind the top hat, and then some bobber stops. And when you do that, you can slide them up, and that'll literally stay up, held on by the bobber stops. And then you can tie all this up. But like I said, I'm not really interested in doing that on this setup. I already have 2 with that, and I don't typically run quick fish that often, so I'm not going to do it on this one. And then another quick tip is for your rod keepers, because this is so much gear and you don't want to leave these leaders or anything on, you can actually hook this part of that clip. You can hook that guy onto your keepers, your hook keepers, and that'll keep it all, once it's all cinched up, it'll make it all nice, tight, and uniform. That's what I do on my other rods as well. When I talk about spinning glows or quick fish, this is what I'm talking about. As you see, I have a lot of colors, different options, and they also come in different sizes. So I've also got some smaller ones here, all different colors. They make them even smaller than that. These are the size I usually run for Chinook, but they're also just easier to see on camera. So what this is, spin and glow, is this piece. It threads onto the line. Then you put a heavy duty quick connect swivel on there. Typically 1 or 2 beads behind, 3. That's all preference. I've messed around with a little bit. It doesn't seem to make a difference more as much. The color is the main difference. And then you tie a egg loop knot onto a hook. And depending on where you're fishing in Oregon, you have to run barbless. So you'll notice all these hooks are barbless. And you got different size hooks depending on the fish. These are going to be bigger sized because these are, again, for my Chinook. I have downsized ones, both spinning glows and hooks, for sockeye and steelhead. So I've got an egg loop knot on here. What this helps do is you'll see this when I'm actually on the water fishing, but we use shrimp, coon shrimp, and sometimes prawns for bigger fish such as the Chinook. But you basically thread the shrimp on, slide this over the tail, pull it tight, and that helps hold that shrimp on there. It's great not to know for any type of bait fishing. Once in the water, these will float, and then the water will go over the blades and cause that to spin, causing vibrations and flash in the water. The reason why you have all these eyelets on your main line and such is you can just attach these like so, and that would be your bottom spin and glow. And then you do the same thing to your T at the top. You put it up here, and then you got 2 on there. These are tied with fluorocarbon leader. That is a spin and glow. If you guys have any questions on that, leave them in the comments down below. If you want to see a more detailed video on how to make these or tie these, please let me know. As far as quick fish, those are these guys. Now, I have special leaders tied up with their own clips, so I don't have to tie up each individual one. I can just switch this clip onto here. These aren't a barrel swivel. These are typically just a clip, and they just attach right onto there. I notice some of these actually, like, no, looks like I'm pretty good except for this one because this was my grandfather's and I just keep it in here mostly for good luck. I've never actually ran it. Remember when I said you can have 3 hooks? 3 hooks doesn't mean 3 lures. So these lures typically come, if you can see, they've got a place there for a hook in the front. You do have to remove hooks to be able to run these. So they're only a single hook, so that'd make it 3 hooks. You still can run the treble because the treble is technically 1 hook. There's the quick fish attached there. And then up at the top is this guy, and this is what I would attach to my main line and then slide it all the way down while everything's in the water. Fairly simple. If you guys have any more questions on that, please let me know. If you have any more questions on the setup, also, please let me know. All right, and that's just a quick, easy run through on what a plunking setup is, how to tie it. If you guys want me to go into more detail, please let me know. This is something, if you can't tell, I'm very excited about. I love fishing this way. I've had a lot of luck in the past. I can throw up some of those pictures right now on the screen of the fish I've caught, and then also how you fish it. So this is big water tactics, meaning you're fishing from the bank, you don't have a boat, you're typically on a bigger river with more current, or the Columbia is huge, right? So use it when you can't like cover the water like you would with, conventional techniques such as a float or a spinner or something like that. You still could potentially catch a fish, but there's not any. These fish are moving up the river. There's no place for them to hold. They're just trying to make their way up and get to their smaller tributaries to go spawn. This is catching them right as they're coming in from the ocean. So with this, you will be just casting out a bunch of weight into the river, depending on how fast the river's flowing, how much you want to scale up or down. In certain parts of the Columbia, typically up above Bonneville Dam, They actually fish, I've heard of people using railroad ties. They tie on with a lighter leader so they can break it off because it's more rocky. Where I fish is more sandy, so I don't worry about that. I try to keep my weights as best possible. But kind of similar to here in Idaho, how we have to have a lighter line attached to our sinkers for sturgeon fishing, so that way if it gets caught in the rocks, that it can break away, and like if you catch a sturgeon, it'll break away, and then they're not tied to that, tied down to the bottom. Bigger water tactics, as far as casting, you don't have to throw it all the way out. Like, you don't have to cast as far as possible. With steelhead in particular, which are sea ran rainbow trout, steelhead typically on the big river will be in really close. I'm only talking 6-8 feet off the bank. I don't really have to cast that far. Same with sockeye. Chinook can be in that close. I've caught a Chinook there. I can throw up a picture of that right here. Chinook can be further out, but they can also be in close. So you can kind of, as you're there, you're typically checking your bait every 45 minutes to an hour to make sure it's still there, make sure the scent's still good, make sure it's still looking good and the presentation's good and there's not a bunch of weeds on it. It's nice is if you have a lot of buddies with you, you can each cast different lengths and you kind of figure out where the fish are, and then everyone can cast there if you start getting bites in one area. But if you're just by yourself or you're just curious, you can, you know, cast out short, nothing, reel in, rebait, cast out again, nothing, a little bit further, okay, reel in, rebait. Maybe you want to switch colors of spinning glow because it's brighter out, so you don't need such a flashy spinning glow. You're gonna go a little bit more subtle, go black, maybe something with black wings instead of mylar that's shiny. Then you cast out further, and then you get a bite. It's a great activity for being with your buddies because you are gonna be setting that sucker in a rod holder and you're gonna be leaving it. You're gonna have a bell on. All of my rods have tubing tied onto them where the bell slips on, and then you just have a bell and you sit there and you wait. It's kind of lazy fishing, but it's a lot of fun with buddies and it's very productive. But I'll show a picture here of what the rod looks like in the rod holder and the setup with the line in the water and the bell on, and then you're just sitting. That's the basics of it. Super simple, super easy. You'll see it in action here, probably on the next video. If you guys have any questions related to plunking, it is one of my favorite things. This is my favorite time of year. Ever since I've moved over to Idaho, once a year, I get together with my buddies, I plan a trip, and I go over there and I go fishing and hopefully bring home some fresh salmon. I will catch you guys on the next video. Have an excellent rest of your day. Stay tuned for the next video. I appreciate you guys, anyone who's watching, anyone who's giving likes, comments. We're just trying to grow this channel and try to help everyone enjoy the great outdoors with caveat of being respectful to other anglers, other hunters, and of course to the wildlife. Thanks, guys.